Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, where we explore the world of professional services consulting. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, each episode delivers expert insights, real-world stories, and interviews with top consultants to help you refine your consulting skills.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Good afternoon. You've got Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska here, and we are excited to follow up to last week's session, or last month's session, and talk a little bit about selling professional services. Yep. Last month, we talked about how do you conduct a good presentation, how do you structure that, how do you organize that, and we talked about it a lot from the delivery and the project management perspective. But this time, I think we are going to go deeper on selling professional services and all the variations that come with that.
Yeah, this is probably one of the things we're most passionate about and most known for. And we're not going to get through all the nuances and subcategories. But what we would like is, after today, if there are areas that we've brushed on today that you'd really like to dive into, like as an example, I had a conversation with head of a large PS organization just yesterday, and he said, gee, we would like to have more time spent on presenting differentiation and articulating messages to executives, right? So, yeah, there's always nuances to work through.
Yeah, and so maybe a good place to get started with this conversation is everybody, whether you're selling professional services or anything, everybody wants to get further ahead in the sales cycle. They want to start that process earlier, and we have a framework
earlier in the buying cycle.
We want to get up. We want to talk earlier in the buying cycle, and as we think about it, it's actually right earlier in the decision making cycle that an executive goes through as they're making some sort of purchase decision. So we have a framework that we'll reference throughout this session, but we think about it in terms of as an executive makes a buying decision on any topic, there's three key questions they must answer in order. The first one is whether or not to act on this problem at all. Does this warrant their time? Is this worthy of their attention and investment given all other priorities that are in place? The next step is then how to act on that particular topic. So we can do it ourselves. We can partner with somebody. There's variety of different options and methodologies, of course. And then finally, it's the with whom to act decision. And that's when they're in vendor selection and they're in price competition and they're in the stages that we feel a lot of pressure as a sales organization often, because somebody has already crafted the answer to those first two questions, whether it's another vendor or another partner of theirs, or they would do that themselves. And so I want to start there with that framework, Dean, and talk a little bit more about that, and particularly how to make sure we are getting as far ahead in that process and answering that whether to act as possible.
So we, as Anthony said, we don't want to live in with whom to act with, because the value, one, they're probably wrong on the how. Mm-hmm. They may not be wrong on the whether, but not often do they know everything you know about how. So we don't want to engage where we're just talking about price. We don't want to engage where we're in vendor. So we want to get up to, ideally, whether to act. Now, whether to act, it might be something already on their mind. It might be on their strategic plan, but they haven't crystallized to take action. And even, this is really important, even if you come into a situation where we're at whom to act with, I say you push it back up at least to how to do it. So we find ourselves in our own firm, somebody comes and says, hey, we're going to do customer intimacy. And we've decided we're going to buy this software product and we're going to do these 2 training sessions. So we move it back up to what's the outcome? What are the steps you're going to take to get there? And because we're experts in that topic, we try to get them on the right path. By getting them on the right path, we have changed the value equation, and now we're in the how to act. The way you get to whether to act, by the way, is by, as we talked about when we talk about structuring offers, is to take that idea and I've got a targeted executive group, I've got a targeted account, I may be in the account and I'm trying to renew the account, it may be a new account, and I'm going to go talk to them and I'm going to let the idea carry the weight, and we've talked about that, so that I have an executive to executive meeting. Now, regardless of them liking that idea or not, it'd be great if they did, you're in the whether to act framework because they're going to tell you things, right? And they're going to share things. And I have not been in, and I'll come back to this in a minute. I haven't been in any meetings in a long time where when they're sharing, you don't identify ways, even if your firm's not going to, you can't identify ways to help them and advise them. So our real key is that get in those meetings and let the idea carry the weight. And then, and I just saw this the other day, it's not normally on my mind, but relax in that meeting. Yeah. Just relax. It's just two people talking. Don't bring a presentation. Yeah. Don't bring 80 people. Just relax and have a conversation.
Yeah, if you're on, and it's a beauty of selling professional services, even more so than selling a product in many cases, because you're able to elevate above the commoditized nature of whatever they think they need to be buying. You're naturally already talking about how are we solving your problem with a solution, whether that's professional services as a standalone or that in conjunction with whatever else your organization has to offer. And so, right, we don't have to sell them on why us, which is you look at sales presentations and we've seen countless examples.
Yeah, it's way too much on why us.
It's what we can do, and that should come through naturally. And of course, we have to have credentials and credibility, and there's ways to validate that downstream. But the very fact that we're in that meeting and able to have that conversation, if you sit back, you relax, you treat them like an executive, they'll treat you back in the same way, and you can start to navigate earlier on in that decision-making process.
Yeah, you can actually decrease your impact and value by overworking it. I have a situation right now where a group wants to do like 100 case studies because they're uncomfortable in there without a case study. And I'm trying to coach them a little bit on it and say, well, let's run through the executive meeting. When does that case study come up? Oh, early, so they know we have a reason to be there. Oh, God, no. Yeah. They're not interested in that yet. And they don't ever believe you can't do. That's not where they're thinking about.
Right.
They're trying to think about, oh, should I do this? Wow, you brought it to me. Tell me some about you guys, but it'll come more naturally. It's not a product sale. That's the big deal. It is not a product sale. It is not a demo. It is not features and fun. It is absolutely relationship and content.
Yeah, which is great, and I agree with all of that. When we're able
and that's
to,
good because he normally disagrees with me.
And when we're able to be proactive on a topic like that, but a lot of the people that we're talking to here, and a lot of people we work with, their professional services organization is brought in to accompany a product sale that is already in flight.
Absolutely,
and you have to complement where we are in the sales process. And so there's how do we bring an organization along on how to sell a broader solution and combine the two of those. But can you give any guidance on, as a professional services seller, right? Maybe that's the same person, or maybe that's a totally separate organization. Yeah. How do you add value? How do you bring the conversation backwards when so many steps may have already happened before you get involved?
Yeah, and that the person you're dealing with in the sales organization has a number to make to pay for their life and their family, and we want to be supportive and empathetic with that every daggum day. Some of the very best people selling big consulting services are actually, by tradition, sales reps, right? And they blend over, and some of them are consultants that blend over the other way.
Well, and you've got the other side of the equation too, where the buyer of that, if you're in a technology sales situation, may not be the strategic buyer, but you may be, and they may be interacting with more of the technical buyer in that situation,
or somebody who can say no.
Right.
So the first thing if let's assume away what we can do as an organization. Let's just make it personal.
Yeah.
I've got this situation, and I'm always coming into these deals, and they may have been communicated really well, maybe with Carol and Tommy because they understand us, but not with Jimmy and Billy. And so what you got to do is get them used to you asking a few questions to lower our risk. Keywords: I want to lower our risk. We all know when a client makes a big purchase, if we didn't move them along the service chain, if you will, the small deal to the bigger deal, where we share risk along the way. When they make a big purchase, you're a vendor and they're pushing risk to you, and you can't see in the black box because you don't know what they're really able to do or not able to do. So we can ask them questions to lower our risk of success. And those are some keywords to help us all. And then make sure your team member knows the questions you're going to ask, the areas you're going to want to investigate, and help them see, and this is about relationship management, help them see, and I truly believe this, I'm going to help you close more deals faster by doing this, and I'm going to help you be a team selling, because any professional service requires an expert, a SME, to explain the implementation, to explain the process, to explain how we get there. And that team really is important, and so you gotta bridge that gap. But I always start with support and empathy.
Yeah.
Because arrogance and finger pointing and
us against them in that situation within an organization.
Work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, the client feels that tension if that's the case. But you mentioned team selling, and it's such an important concept here for selling professional services, because whether you're complementing the enterprise sales team, the product sales team, or it's just a self-contained professional services sale, the value, the credibility, the expertise in that often comes from an expert that's been there, done that, and has delivered on engagements like this, and could speak to, these are the pitfalls you're going to run into in an engagement. We can already anticipate that.
Right. We're experts. We're experts.
To lower the risk and to give the confidence
and maybe make the deal bigger.
Right.
But let's also take the side of the sales rep, right? So the sales rep's inviting these consultants in, and the consultants are not used to the commercial journey often.
Nope.
And they're going to say things that, there's a time and a way to talk about things going to go, difficult in the journey.
Yeah. Don't lead with all the things that are going to screw up about what we're going to do.
Yeah, I can't believe you people. No.
Yeah.
So it goes the other way, where the relationship's got to be, we got to help you play your part of the team. For me, the salesperson with the bag, to make it work. And again, I would meet them where they are, and I would coach them to say, hey, every client's got these concerns at this point, and that's why I want to introduce you. I want to introduce, as an example, I want to introduce you at the point that I'm pretty sure they would like to do this, if they can be convinced it's doable and it's important and they can afford it. But here's the history, but it's a different culture. So you've got to help them, because we're on the consulting side, they're very analytical. And sometimes they think, well, I'm just telling them the truth. Well, I've raised 5 kids, you've got 2 kids. I got a lot of truth from my children when they were growing up. I don't think telling my 5-year-old that if you don't get into a good college, you're going to starve. I could work on don't touch the oven, right?
Yeah.
So empathy on both, but it's a team sell. And we could do a whole session just on those 2 groups working together better.
Yeah, and the other thing that we've found particularly useful over time, right? Of course, going back to our last session and other ones, preparation is so critical in these kinds of conversations, because there are nuances about the sales process when you're doing a team sale. It's truly a dance between you and your counterpart in that sales meeting.
It takes faith in each other.
But as the salesperson in those meetings, right, with the right level of preparation, you can know the questions the client's going to ask, and you can prepare and actually, on behalf of the client, sit on the client's side of the table, figuratively or literally, and ask the delivery consultant some of the questions that the client will have in their mind, but you can come across as their advocate in the meeting rather than a member of the delivery team.
Great way to build additional intimacy with the executive and the team. Great way, you do it at a stakeholder meeting or any meeting. Great way to show content value, right? One of the things we always stress is, make sure you bring through the whole client journey sales in, but give them a role, let them add value, so the client doesn't think, oh, Jimmy's here, we must be working a deal, right? So we want to bring them along, but it's a great thing. Sit on the side, ask the questions they're not asking, even be aggressive and go, well, when you said this, does that mean this is a real big problem? Have faith that the no buying client, no serious buying executive expects things to be easy.
Yeah.
No matter what they say.
Man, the toughest questions I've ever had in a meeting with a client are from you instead of from the client.
And he did a good job. He did a good job.
Yeah, but that's what
by design.
Right?
That's what the client to know.
Yeah. You talked about this concept of a vendor versus a partner in some of these situations, and how you start to position yourself a little bit like that. What are your thoughts on overcoming what it seems to be a more common tendency now, which is a buyer is placing us in a box and they already think they know, right? They're already treating us with whom to act, and they don't allow us to have some of the weather. Send me a proposal on this. They're pushing us to not have those conversations that allow us to do all of these things we're talking about, but instead just saying, send it over to me, I'll review something, you have to put something together, and it just they think it's a more efficient process for them, but it's very much just treating us like a vendor.
Yeah, and let me divide that into a couple of pieces. Sure. One, as we dive in that with companies, we find not always, but more than half the time, we are causing them to act that way by beginning to act like a vendor from day one. Mm-hmm. Hey, if you like this, we'll get a demo in here. Hey, have you read all this material? Here's my presentation and 30 people from my firm in here to watch me give you a presentation. We'd like 30 people from your firm in here. So let's just, it's intimacy and stuff. So let's get ourselves out of the way. Yeah. Now, let's say that we have a lot of incoming, we're a vendor opportunities. Well, one thing I would do is I always take a plentiful attitude that there's going to be, if we do everything right, there's plenty of work. So I would try to encourage everybody to be selective. Now, what can happen sometimes is I'm the sales rep in this case. I got 5 RFPs, but I've got some other deals I work. But one of those RFPs might make it. I'm just going to slough them over to PS, and they're going to spend 2 months of somebody's work. So again, let's be a team. Come back and explain. Let's have a rating system where we decide if we have a real opportunity. And we have a real, so that's the RFP sauce. But let's just say it's a normal sales process, and we're just a vendor to them, and we're with purchasing, or just there's a lot of executives like that. So I'm aggressive. So I'm going to give you what I might do, and you just tone it back about 8 steps, you'll be fine. I'd probably say, I'm not sure we're the right guys for you. I'm not sure that. Let me just. This is what you said. And this is what's going to happen. I'm not sure that solves that problem. Yep. I'm a little confused because I would think X and Y makes Z and B, and Z and B. And by the way, have y'all ever implemented anything? Had done no transformation experience? Okay, wow. And you've had a lot of failed implementations or initiatives, and let's keep this from being that way. But that's me. But you could take that same concept and nice it up. I'm old. But, and then get them onto, hey, we're because you know why? We don't want bad implementations. We want bad situations. And when you're treated like a vendor, you are taking the risk. They're not. They're taking the risk of failure, but they're going to blame you. Right. So it's just a terrible environment to be in.
Yeah. It sets even if you win that opportunity, it sets the rest of the relationship up for a much more difficult long-term relationship to manage.
We had a giant company that we were doing millions of dollars of work with, and they sent us an RFP for one of the things we do, and we refused to respond. Yeah. And so the CEO was actually involved with us, and she called me, and this is a few years ago. She called me and said, "It's kind of embarrassing. You're a partner, and you didn't respond to an RFP." And my response was, I don't think that RFP was well written. I don't think it was on topic. And I think that you'll end up picking the wrong partner for that. And I don't want to participate in that. Now, by the way, they went forward with the RFP and chose someone. And I don't even remember if it's successful or not. But we chose not to participate because it would actually weaken our other relationships. Mm-hmm.
So changing gears just a little bit here, right? As we talk about selling professional services and doing some of these things, we probably have people in the audience that maybe fall into one of 2 camps here. One is they are the sales resources out there and they're having to go and do some of these things. And so we'll take that group. And then you've got another group that is looking to build a team around how do I add more professional services, sales resources, and be effective in the market. So if you were to pick, call it the top 3, right, attributes of a successful professional services salesperson, right? And these are things you can focus on if you're an individual developing, but also things that you should prioritize to search for and look for in hiring a person like this, because for all the reasons we've talked about, it is different than a professional services delivery resource and a traditional sales resource.
Yeah, and I want to first say that our experience has been that if people want to develop these, they can.
Oh yeah.
So please, wherever you start, just know that these are just thinking differently. But and I mean, I must know 150 people that I've had the blessing to go through with this, and they've all. I mean, I meet people who say, yeah, their whole career was changed by just learning a few of these things. Well, one of them is you want to be content rich and conceptual, and you are. So free yourself from all these hidebound things and be in the moment, hear what they say, respond to what they say. So don't over prepare, don't over memorize, just be there. The second is you've got to be thorough from a follow-up and take action and do all the principles of selling. Don't leave a meeting without the next meeting planned. Go ahead and ask them where we are and, how is this decision made? So in addition to being consultative, conceptual, you've still got to use all those principles that move a deal along. And they get that, right? They get that. The third thing, I think that people need to be friendly. They need to be, and you can act friendly. You can develop friendliness, right? And you got to be sincerely interested in them and their well-being, and that comes across. So if, in my world, if I met somebody really ability to be in the moment and conceptual and can relax and have a conversation, we can equip them with all the things, the ideas and everything, and they're going to make friends, right? And they know the principles of selling. Man, they can do an awful lot. And I think, and I know tons of people that have made the transition from both sides, professional service to selling, traditional selling to professional service selling. They found it the most rewarding job in the world because you're actually selling things that solve problems.
Right. Yeah.
And you get more executive time.
Right. Yeah. And right, to your point, those are much more the kind of the soft skill type attributes that somebody would need to be successful. Like you alluded to before, the next session will be on idea selling, which is a framework for, okay, how do you train somebody on how to take that content richness and apply it in a meeting in a way that doesn't even to them feel salesy. So even if you're stepping out of a traditional delivery role into something new, right? Often there's the uncertainty or what's this going to feel like to actually be pitching and selling.
You're right.
It's a way.
The framework.
There are framework, whether it's idea selling or something else. There are plenty of frameworks and sales methodologies and models that could be applied and trained
that are
on.
Content rich.
Very content rich.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we will take idea selling because take it as a framework, not as the Bible, but it's been very. I think we've had about 45 or 50 firms go through that. But you did hit on one thing that I had forgotten about. A lot of the consultants get in their mind, I'm not a salesperson, right? I'm blah, blah, blah. I was going to use some derogatory terms for both of us.
I'm glad you didn't.
No. Yeah. It happens sometimes. But what I always tell them is you can't help a client with one project. You're just kidding yourself. You've got to be there. You've got to be helping them. You got to find new things to help them or you're not going to move their dial. For them to do that, they must pay for it or it's not of value. So it's a moral issue that you must sell them more things that move them down the road, and you must participate that and understand it's not just your economics that are important, and they are. It is their economics that are important. And you look at the great consulting firms or the great consultants that I've known over my life, they're able to stay in an account and help them and help on topic, and that's what matters. Because then you can look back and say, wow, we made a difference. But it's a moral issue to me. You've got to be willing to engage in the commercial process.
Totally agree. So anything you want to close on? Key summary points for this session here.
Yeah, so let's just take some
practical things.
Some practical things you can take and problems they might come across.
Sure.
So you're in a meeting with an executive. It's not going well, right? She's not paying attention, but you can always stop. You can always stop mid-sentence, stop mid-process, restart with, hey, listen, the reason I wanted to get together, and I'm sorry that maybe I've got us off track, but I want to understand your view of what we're investing a lot of time in this idea. I want to know what you think, and would that be applicable in a business like yours? So what I did is I reset, no matter where we went, I reset it all the way back, and I set it up at a conceptual. And by the way, we are interested in what they think about it. I mean, it's not we're not hoodwinking.
It's not disingenuous.
Yeah,
no.
it's not, but we are.
Yeah.
Another thing is if you find yourself talking too much. I went to a meeting like this the other day. Or if you find you're not verbal enough, both ends. If you're talking too much, again, you can just stop. They will fill the space. Don't worry. Never be worried in a meeting. Second, but if you find that you're having trouble interjecting in them because they are verbose or they're excited about something, a tool I would use is I would make sure they saw me jotting down things. And then I'd say, well, just a second, Carol or Kevin, I want to make sure I got this. Yeah. Now, when I'm reading back to them, we would call this guide by listening. I'm reading back, I am adding facts that bring them back to my idea. You mentioned that we have a problem right now in our 7 manufacturing plants that we're unable to reduce packaging cost in, and that's our supply chain. And we don't know if we need to work with a vendor. We don't know, but to me that directly relates to the ability to come in, and because you're a process manufacturer, I would guess 92% of your costs are incoming product as opposed to labor. And well, that's right. Okay, well, I think that's something that would fit in our overall strategy. Who's worked on that? So see, I brought it back. Now I'm going to get him back on a topic I like. So that's how you can interrupt. But you interrupt by letting them see you write down, and then you give it back to them.
What about how do you handle fees, pricing? Where in the process do you have that conversation? Because the thing that continues, right, especially if you're not at the whether to act where you can reposition on value, is they're not only shopping the value of what you can provide and your specific offerings to one another, but price, and they'll break it down in a bunch of different ways depending on what their background is as a buyer. So is it value-based pricing? Is it hourly pricing? Right? No matter how you want to do it, they have a frame of reference that they're already coming in with.
Right. And I would argue what we want to do is discover their frame of reference, and I'll go over how to do that. I know we only have a couple of minutes left. And then I want to and meet them where they are in their frame of reference and explain why there are other options that might be better and why they're better. So let's say they are absolutely convinced that consultants rob them. We both had a client that once said, "Are they trying to upsell us?" Remember? Uh-huh. It was the CEO of a big company. Yes, we were. But anyway, when you have that happen, you've got to absolutely just take control and be forthright and say, I understand, or I hear you saying that you expect this to be fixed fee, right?
Sure.
Okay, we can do that, but we need to know a lot more. And the reason is I don't want you to take a risk or me to take a risk. I want to be partners. I understand you want to do this time and materials. Or understand that you've set a budget and you're uncomfortable sharing that budget, but we should begin to talk about magnitude of what you're trying to do, because we might have to reduce what you're trying to accomplish or break it into multiple steps. So that's where we meet them where they are. We're not going to have time today, but there's a lot of things you can do early in the process to fix that. Yeah. And price management.
Yeah, but everything you just listed there is not just solving our problem of trying to figure out their budget and how to best price and negotiate with them at that stage of the process, but it's adding value to how they're viewing their problem and how they're going about buying it. Yep. Whether or not they work with us on that topic or not, we've set the framework
we always
and the
add value.
Relationship to move that process forward. So,
all right, next week, next month,
yeah,
because we won't be here next week. We're going to talk about idea selling and how that framework really helps the sales partnership between the billables and the sales asset move the team forward.
Thanks.
Ciao.